Meow, welcome to PodKat. This is my pod and I am Kat. How is everyone? I really hope that you guys are getting by, taking care of yourselves. Remember that you are not alone in your fears. It's okay to not know how to handle this right now. Please set boundaries that make you feel safe. And if you feel overwhelmed, remember that you can always Google pictures of hairless guinea pigs for free. Check it out. They're adorable. The question I wanted to have listeners respond to today is, how do you fact check? Do you fact check? Do you hold your news outlets of choice as authority? Who or what to you feels like the source of truth? So I want to introduce today's guest, the soon-to-be Mrs. Bekah.
Hello.
Hey, Chica. Who are you and where are you?
Yes, my name is Bekah, real Bekah. Either one is fine. And I'm currently sitting on my bed in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. Well, hello in Denver. I heard you guys got some storm today.
Well, it's so funny. We had a really big storm on, what is today, Saturday? We had a big storm on Thursday. And then yesterday was very cold and icy. And then today was beautiful.
Oh, good.
So that's spring in Colorado.
That is spring in Colorado. I'm asking everybody what their new reality is. If you have had any financial changes, any way that are you working from home? Did you want to talk to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I am so fortunate that I am not feeling financially concerned right now. I can do the vast majority of my work remotely, so my everything is from home these days. And my partner is also working from home, so that's been an interesting adjustment. We're both very introverted, and so like us being with each other all the time has been both a blessing and like a weird new thing. So sort of a maneuver. But yeah, so working from home and trying to, socially distance as much as possible. A lot of phone calls, a lot of like FaceTimes. So.
Yeah, I was listening to a live stream with Hannah Hart, Grace Helbig, and Mamrie Hart, and Hannah was saying, if you and your significant other now have to work from home, anything that goes wrong, just blame it on a third made-up imaginary coworker. Be like, Cheryl, she's so messy. Like if your partner's messy, you just be like, Cheryl. Blame it on the third coworker. And then Mamrie Hart was like, you mean just be passive-aggressive? And I was like, yeah, that seems like it would lead to future complications. Like, I could just see resentment building up as opposed to just being like, hey, can you do dishes? Whatever works for everyone.
Right, to each their own. It's been fun. Like, we are engaged, as you mentioned, and so it's been sort of fun to kind of talk about, like, we've been living together for a long time, so it's not like we don't know what it's like, but it's sort of like, it's like a trial run for marriage.
Yeah.
And it's been nice, I am a very, type A personality, like, cleanliness, like, is next to godliness, in my opinion. I just I need order, and so I've been kind of communicating that a lot, and he has been really wonderful, and we've been doing a lot of like deep spring cleaning. So it's actually been like a nice, we have a lot of time in the house, obviously, so I've been able to like finish some projects that have been waiting for me for a long time, so that's kind of nice.
Well, I was going to ask that later, but I guess I'll just get to it now. So in my mind, I'm like, I just wish there were people around. Like, when my spouse goes out to work, I'm like, come home immediately. Like, I'm really, really wanting to fill my space with, I have been having close to 5 hours of phone calls a day, and mostly it's because of the podcast, but also I just want to catch up with everybody. But it didn't occur to me that, people might need their space right now. Like, that's so different than my experience because I'm not someone who needs, I'm truly what is called extroverted, where being around people energizes me, and I could be around, I was in a sorority, my social event, I could go to a rush party and then come home and still want to chat with my roommate. So I understand that is not the experience of everybody. So as what you've mentioned, needing space or needing to maneuver around so much time stuck with a person, even if it's a person you love, I wanted to get a conversation going about that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think I've seen a lot of things on social media from people who are in, long-term relationships and they're living with their partner, and they say, like, oh, this is hard, but at least I have my best friend with me. And I, totally agree with that. It's so special, and it's such a privilege to, have him here. But we both are very introverted, and so it was day 2, and I was like, I need to figure out how, to get some time by myself. And he was like, yeah, me too. And so we just sort of started talking about some simple things okay, we've been going on walks together. Why don't we do one walk together and one walk alone? And then when the other person is going on their walk, we're both getting double alone time, basically, because we're both going to go on a walk on our own. And the other one gets to be home and, be by themselves. So, yeah, that's been working really well for us. And it's funny because I think part of me really likes being able to, call people and catch up with people. This has been, a nice, for lack of a better word, excuse for that. But I have found myself getting, kind of socially fatigued, which I wasn't expecting in a situation like this at all. But yeah, there's some people on my list who I'm like, oh, I really want to talk to that person, and it's been a week, and I haven't talked to them because I haven't had the energy to do it. So
yeah, everyone's checking in, which is really cool and heartwarming, but that could be a boundary of saying, hey, even though I'm home, I'm still working, or I'm busy, or, let's check in next week. I'm probably going to say it a lot on this podcast, but setting boundaries and then, learning to respect other people's boundaries. I was talking about that this morning with a friend of, she and I were talking over just, different boundaries that we've seen people come up with, and something would be hey, I want to talk to you, but I don't want to talk about COVID-19. Can we just talk and not talk about it? Or you might be hey, I really want to talk about it. I'm really scared about it. Can we brainstorm and just vent it out? But I think knowing going into it what kind of a conversation you're going to have might be helpful. You might not know until you're there, but I think it's okay to say, I just can't talk about it anymore. It doesn't mean you don't care, but you use the word fatigued. I think that could be true. But just in general, even social fatigue, even if you're not seeing people face to face, I think I'm getting that of...
Yeah, it's funny.
I'm getting how people can feel that way.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I see how people could feel that way. Again, I get very charged by talking to people. If I'm feeling tired, if I'm kind of feeling potatoey and I'm kind of ugh, talking to people, it charges my battery. I feel oh, okay, now I can get back to whatever I was doing. For me, it's good distraction, it's good motivator, and it kind of pumps me back up. But I don't think that's the typical experience. I think usually people kind of need to mellow out a bit after social interaction.
Well, and it varies from person to person, right? That obviously is what you and I are talking about right now. But yeah, I am so guilty of over planning myself, and so yeah, I think you kind of reinforcing setting boundaries is really helpful for me, because it not only is important for me to set boundaries with other people, but it's important for me to set boundaries with myself. Because I think kind of going back to how I am obsessed with having a clean space, I've been cleaning a lot lately and not really giving myself time to do anything else, which frankly at this point is like what I need. Like I need to have, if I don't clean my space, then I'm going to keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I think I finally came to the realization today, like, it's okay to, like, not read your book today. Like, you did other stuff. So, like, I think I'm just, like, so excited about, like, oh, I'll read a book, I'll do a puzzle, I'll knit a sweater. Like, you don't have to do all of that in one day.
Well, that was something they were talking about on, I told you I listened to the live stream of Mary Grace and Hannah, and they were talking about how, like, right now people are like, there's no excuse not to write the great novel and make your screenplay and do that amazing art project. But, like, you don't have to do those things. Spend your quarantine however you want to. And maybe you will, but this week you can be a potato, or you can call friends, or you can take time for yourself. But I didn't even think of that, because for me, I'm like, you know what? This is the kick in the butt that I needed to get up and do the things, to live. Because when I thought about, I mean, it's dark, but when you think about, like, I could have the virus, I could die, the end. Okay, I don't want that. What am I going to do with my life, my one wild and precious life? Let me live it. If I'm going to live it, let me make it worth living. So for me, it's been very motivating, even though it's really scary. And if I stop to think about it, I'm like, oh God. But if I use it as hey, I'm a fighter, I'm strong, I'm going to get through this, and then I'm going to have this amazing life, and it's going to be really incredible if I put in the work now. But I'm also trying to, I mean, even I know I spent a lot of today getting podcast stuff working. I switched to just audio instead of video. And that took me a while to get set up so that I didn't apply for unemployment. So, like, there are big things I need to do, like my taxes and these things. So I want to make sure that I still make those things happen. But I could see where if you're putting pressure on yourself that you have to get these art projects done and you have to make the big thing happen, that would be like extra stress in an already like train wreck of a time.
Right. Well, and like I talked to someone the other day who was saying like the key to like living your best life right now is it's funny, setting boundaries and planning out your days in like a meaningful way. And so it's sort of that question of like, okay, like what kind of task am I going to do this morning? And set timers basically was one of the other things that she said, was like set timers so that you have a deadline essentially, and like you can be flexible with that, but like once that timer goes off, like it's time to move on to something else or make the decision to like remove that other thing you were going to do so you can keep working on this thing.
I think that would be helpful for me. You talked about how you feel like you can't move on until your house is cleaned. I get very much like that when I used to go to work, and then I would come home and it's like I just want to relax, and I was like, no, I have to sweep in here and I have to get the dishes done, and if I don't start the food, but I get very ADHD with my chores where it's like, oh, I want to sweep the floor. Hey, I should put on a podcast or music before I do that. Oh, I haven't cleaned up my computer in a while. Oh, before I do that, let me light a candle. Holy cow, this table is dirty. Like I get so the next thing. So I think you were talking about setting a timer. It's like, hey, this is chore time. If you want to clean your space, your workspace before you do work, here's 20 minutes. But I mean, even
I thought that was such great advice. I hadn't thought about it before, but it was like, oh yeah, if I set a timer,
I heard about
forced me to, have boundaries, basically.
I heard about people doing, I don't know, maybe it was Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon, one of the Jimmys was talking about Formal Friday, where like he got dressed and he put on his nice clothes, like as if he were going to go out, and he was like, it's really important to like put on your clothes and not just stay in your PJs, because if you like put on a pair of jeans even, you feel more able to like, it's like that thing when you go for a job interview, like dress for the job that you want. And so if you do get up and have a schedule, that might be healthy right now.
Totally, yeah.
And I like that you're scheduling. 100%. I like that y'all are scheduling your alone time too, because I find that if I get to a point where I do kind of need alone time, but I don't vocalize that, then it just comes off to my partner that I am not interested in what they're saying. But really, it's like, hey, I want to check my social media, but we live together, so when am I ever going to get to check that unless I do it while we're talking? But then, I heard that the biggest thing that actually breaks people up is failure in communication. And, like undivided attention. That if you don't make it a priority to have undivided attention, but you can't always give undivided attention, especially when you live with or are quarantined with someone. So if you say, hey, my boundary is that I need this time to go do my thing, and then when we come together, that's your time, baby. Do you want to talk any about planning your wedding as far as, are you still seeking a venue?
Oh my God.
How do you feel, girl?
Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet to ask about that. It's just kind of funny how the timing of things happens. I think.
Sure.
My wedding is in October.
Okay.
And so I am feeling mostly comfortable that hopefully, the world will feel a little bit more normal by October, and we won't have to postpone our wedding. And if that does happen, then we'll have ample time to kind of maneuver that situation. But yeah, it's so funny. I bought a dress a week ago, which was so exciting, and I was really excited, and I am very excited about it. And it was funny, I had a conversation with my grandma. She called me so I bought my dress on Friday, and she called me the following Tuesday, and so much had changed in those, 5 days. And so she was asking, and my dress is coming from South Africa, and she was asking me, have you called the salon? You might want to ask them if they can put that sample that you tried on hold for you, because it fit you really well. You could just have that dress. What are you going to do if your dress doesn't come? If this is creating so many problems on the global stage that you can't get your dress. Which is something that I just was not thinking about at all. So luckily I got an email from them this weekend saying hey, your dress is supposed to be here by June, so I'll respond to them and just kind of check in on that. But yeah, it's little things like that, or trips that we have planned that we're not sure if people are going to be able to be here for, ahead of the wedding. And little things we had a caterer tasting next week that's been canceled. And so how does that affect our decision about picking a caterer? Does that set things back? So yeah, it's stressful in some ways, but then I'm so grateful for the things that did happen. I bought my dress, and my fiance and I got our engagement photos,
which are stunning, by the way. I'm loving every day that I'm seeing him post them. They're so heartwarming. They're a total indie album cover. I love them.
You're so sweet. Yeah, I would be lying. I'm so happy with them. I really that's been such a silver lining. So in that regard, I'm wow, we really got those in under the wire. If I hadn't picked my dress when I did, if we hadn't been able to do our photos when we did, that would have been a long time before we were able to do it, and would have been really stressful to me. So I'm really grateful, for stuff like that. But that was a really long answer.
Well, you do have a pretty long time before October, so it's certainly not happen. I mean, if you're planning an April wedding right now,
Oh gosh,
I wish you luck,
feel
friend.
so bad. I know a lot of people who have weddings that they were supposed to go to that, like in May, that have been canceled.
I have an April birthday, and I'm annoyed about it. Like, that's my birth month, you know?
Yeah.
It's silly. But, like, I mean, honestly, as far as, like, a wedding planning or event planning, I'm imagining stress. But if I were pregnant right now, my fear would be very high because I already would be like, everything has to be perfect. So I think for like any kind of health thing, you know, if you were going in for a surgery, any of that kind of stuff, like I really, really sympathize with those people. And that's why I want people to self-quarantine and social distance and wash their hands. We can all end the quarantine quickly and get healthy so people can have their beautiful babies into a brighter future.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
But you do have a while before October, and I think that...
I will be, we will be fine. You know, like...
Yeah, but it's hard to not know. I mean,
but we'll be fine.
Well, yeah, but if you want to have a bridal shower and a bachelorette party and like the things leading up to it could be kind of difficult to plan around because people have to fly in for that stuff and people might be nervous to fly. And yeah, I think that a lot of the wedding stress would be so amplified when you don't know what tomorrow brings. So.
Yeah, and you know, I am just feeling very grateful for the timing of it. Because for me, the fact that I was able to kind of get those big like checklist items checked off, and now, like you said, it's like we have a lot of time before October. That's really nice. And yeah, I'm just feeling really sad for one of my very, very good friends is graduating from vet school in May, and she doesn't get to have a ceremony anymore. Oh. And that's like literally what she's been working toward her entire life.
I'm so sad about, like, especially high school seniors who aren't going to have prom and their high school musical and those things.
So many rites of passage. Yeah.
I know people want to, like, do prom in July. Like, I've heard some schools that are just going to, like, delay it. So do what you can. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a joke, but it's not, comparing it to, like, Thanos' snap in Avengers, where it's like you can't just undo the snap. And you hope you can do it right. You hope you can make it right moving forward.
Right.
But you can't give back everybody's 5 years, and this is a weird time, whatever you're going through. If it gives you any peace of mind about wedding planning, I will say I planned an out-of-state wedding, and I feel like planning a wedding from quarantine is kind of like planning an out-of-state wedding because you can't see the things. But if you have your venue picked, right?
Yeah, no,
okay,
I am so lucky. The big things are in place, and so that feels good.
Good. Well, I wanted to come back to today's question about fact-checking, checking news outlets, and I think the reason I was thinking about this was because I was on Facebook, and I've never seen this before, but I was scrolling past, somebody put up like a meme that said, hey, if you're missing baby food, call this number and you get free baby food. And Facebook said, this is false. Like, I've never seen that. And so I don't know if they're doing it specifically right now because there's so much misinformation. But I wanted to ask you, since you work in a news situation, about fact-checking and truth.
Totally, yeah. Those are big questions right now, right?
What do we believe? Who do we believe?
Yes. Well, so should I just kind of like ramble or
go off, girl? No, I think my question is just about, and maybe you can say this professionally or personally. How do you fact check?
Yeah, totally. Well, so I am not in the newsroom specifically. My job is as a podcast producer, actually.
Okay.
And so I definitely work with the newsroom a lot, but I wouldn't call myself a reporter at this point. So I just want to put that caveat out there, I guess, or just contextualize.
She's already setting the facts straight.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Good.
But yeah, so to be honest, I don't really know, because I'm not in the newsroom. I don't know what their standard practices are as far as fact checking, but I do know as far as podcasts go, we have dedicated fact checkers who go through each episode before it goes out, and they flag what is in the episode. And it's basically like, and when I was doing some shorter stories and features, the advice that I was given when I was fact checking my own pieces was like, anything that you say in your piece, like, that can be verified needs to be verified. So like, always go back and check your dates, check names, just kind of like, what is a fact in your story, and like, how can you verify it? So that's kind of like the professional side of it, at least in my experience, which I just would like to emphasize is pretty limited as far as like a pure news outlet, like putting out news every single day. But I also think just as a consumer, it's so important to consume multiple sources and different types of media. And I know that's so much easier said than done, because I don't know about you, Kat. I don't know about everybody listening, but like, I get news fatigue very, very, very quickly. And so it's hard, but I do think like there are certain things that, especially if if you're going to talk about it, you should be like, read the Washington Post and then go check out the New York Times article about it. Maybe see what CBS News, you should be diversifying your sources so that you can really verify that information, in my opinion. So those are kind of like my baseline things, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about when you're in academia, in high school, college, etc., and you have to MLA cite your stuff. But I mean, I remember in high school, back in the old days, we'd go to the library and we'd crack open a book and we'd find a source. But I mean, honestly, stupid question here, but I've heard that Wikipedia generally is honestly fairly decent, as long as it doesn't say this is missing citations and stuff. But I know a lot of academics who use Wikipedia, so I mean I always wonder about really, is that true? But there are it's so easy to just Google something and then you get several different stories, but I was just wondering about where does authority come from?
Right. No, it's a great question. Well, it's funny you mentioned Wikipedia, because I had a class in college where one of our assignments was to basically add a fact to Wikipedia. Find a Wikipedia page that has that lacks information that you know to be true, and add it, and then have a source to back it up, basically. But so the first step of the assignment was just submit that fact with no verification and see what happens. And I was also taking some film classes at the time, and so I was adding factoid about Sunset Boulevard, the movie.
Very familiar with it. Yes, I often think to myself as I'm in Hollywood, I hope I don't end up in my swimming pool.
Yes, for anyone unfamiliar, it's I'm ready for my close-up Mr. DeMille is the iconic line, right? So I had I had just written a paper about it for this film class, and so I knew some extra stuff about it. So I went to the Wikipedia page, found something that wasn't there, and so I just submitted it with no citation. And within a couple of days, I got an email back saying your information is not verified.
Oh.
Your suggestions have been rejected.
Okay.
And so, that was 6 years ago now, but I would imagine if they were doing it 6 years ago, they're still doing it now.
Well, Yeah, I use Wikipedia if I'm like, what do I really know about the O.J. Simpson trial? I will use Wikipedia as like kind of an overarching, fleshes out my understanding of the context of it. But I would then go double check some of that stuff, maybe.
Yeah, totally. It's an excellent starting point, for sure.
It's not something I would cite in academia, but yeah, I don't know, I was just thinking about, like, where does our fact understanding actually come from, I guess, because...
Yeah. That's such a good question. We're all trying to figure that out, right? Sure.
Yeah, I'm just...
What is truth?
What is truth? Becca brought you on today to answer this. No, but I was just curious. I mean, especially because a lot of, as we all go through our Facebook feed, we're like, that can't be right? But I think particularly there's a lot of misinformation relating back to this pandemic, and so I'm like, where do I go? Other than I had a guest on talking about the importance of, like, the World Health Organization and the CDC and using those as authorities in this situation. So I think if somebody is an expert in whatever that field is, maybe that could be a good place to start.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a really good point, like, especially on Facebook and Twitter and, like, really any social media channel. I think, the question of authority is really important, and you have to figure out what sources are real sources and which sources are fake. And, like, the example that comes immediately to my mind was, like, back during the Sochi Olympics. Do you remember, did you watch the Sochi Olympics?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Did you see the opening ceremony?
I think so. If not live, I maybe watched it later. But I don't remember watching the whole thing.
There was a moment where there were, like, these, like, stars that were supposed to open up into the Olympic rings.
Okay.
And there was, like, a malfunction where one of those stars didn't open, so it, like, didn't complete the Olympic rings.
Oh no.
And the next day, I saw an article on Facebook that said, engineer responsible for failed Olympic ring in opening ceremony found dead in his apartment.
Oh, gosh. Mercy.
And I was like, oh, my gosh, like, that's so, like, I can't believe, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And my mind starts going all these different places. And then I clicked on it, and it was a news source that I wasn't familiar with.
Okay.
And I Googled it, and it was a satirical news source.
Yeah. I'm always surprised when people don't know that The Onion is satire. So, yeah, I think checking out your news source helps your credibility.
Oh, yeah, like, that's so, yeah, I mean, that, I think, is the lesson of that one for me in particular, is, like, if you don't recognize the publication, like, just go to their website and click on their About page. Just, like,
well, that sounds like a credible headline. If I saw that headline, there's nothing satirical about it. There's nothing inherently funny or, so it sounds like news.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think we just need to be careful with how much we're consuming and from where. But I know a lot of people right now are like, okay, I check the news in the morning and then I shut it off and I go on with my day because there's nothing I can do right now, just for their own health, unless you're directly in the medical health profession right now and it relates to your job. If you're staying home, maybe you don't need to know because I'll see, China has a vaccine, and you're like, wow, great news. And then you look into it and it's like, no, in a month they'll have a test trial that will take a year and this and that. And you're like, okay, so why did I spend all that time thinking about that? So.
Well, and yeah, that brings up also another point that, like, I am so guilty of this, and I'm trying to work on it, but, like, it's so easy to take headlines as the gospel.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, they're not entirely, like, I think very rarely they are meant to be misleading, but sometimes they're misleading. And in a lot of cases, especially for really big news operations, the person who wrote that story did not pick that headline. It's someone else's job. And so, like, I think that's also something to really keep in mind. And the example you just gave is such a perfect example of that. It's like the headline may not be completely inaccurate, but it can be misleading. And so it's important to, like, read the article and actually, like, understand what's going on.
Well, you can also bend statistics.
All the time. I read headlines and then I'm like, whoa, did you hear blah, blah, blah? And then someone is like, did you read that article? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't. And they're like, well, let me inform you.
Yeah, and statistics can be so misleading as well. I love statistics, but I think that it's crazy how you can have the exact same chart and you can argue either side because it's like, so, well, who all was interviewed in that test number that you're using? And, like, you know, if the question is like, so-and-so is doing a bad job, isn't he? And then you'd be like, yes or no. But then if you say, like, but you phrased it as so-and-so is doing a bad job versus do you think he's doing a bad job? And you're like, okay, well, that was, like, it could be misleading questions in the statistics. But, like, I was listening to the news in my car, and they were telling me about how this was a reputable news site that was having a hard time dealing with more sensational news sites because the you won't believe ... click here. That gets more clicks than news. So a lot of the headlines now have to be, you won't believe your eyes, click here, in order to get traction. But you don't want to exaggerate stuff, I guess.
Well, and it's so hard because consumers so often say they want things that they don't actually consume. And so it's like, it's really common for people to say, I want in-depth coverage of the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. But no one is reading stories of the Affordable Care Act. Like, you know, like, the story, like, people, and that's just kind of human nature, right? Like, one of the biggest stories this year was Kobe Bryant's death because it was sudden and it was shocking.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the stuff that people, like, just naturally are drawn to. And that's not, like, a critique, but it's a reality.
Well, we want to feel like we care about the Affordable Care Act, but we don't want to read that much about it because we'd rather know who has the juiciest booty in Hollywood. So.
Right, yeah. No, it's really interesting. And so I think that's a challenge, too, in the way that the media functions right now and just, like, the way that information is moving. It's like, a lot of the time, like, with the misinformation, kind of like to the point that you were just making, it's like the headlines are, like, really flashy and clickbaity.
And some of us only have time to read the headlines. Like, I know a lot of people, they wake up and the first thing they do is immediately look at their phone, headline, go on about their day. You know, but I think if you're going to then spread that information, maybe look more into it. I totally am guilty of that, where I'm like, hey, I heard ... But yeah, it is, if you want to actually speak with any credibility on something like the whole Affordable Care Act, maybe read into the whole article.
Well, and it's just, you know, it's so hard, and it's something that I personally have not figured out, and if you have advice, please let me know. But it's like, how can I be an informed citizen? And, like, how can I make time to do the research that I want to do? And on top of that, how can I make mental headspace for that? Because, you know, I'll say it again, like, news fatigue is, like, very, very real.
Yeah. I guess, have a few things that you, like, we're not meant to be experts in everything. And I'm kind of enjoying talking to different people in this podcast and realizing, like, how limited my knowledge is on different topics. And, you know, like, I'm looking forward to talking to a teacher and hearing their experience, and talking to maybe a counselor and hearing their experience. And you can have a lot of interests, but just acknowledging that, like, it's okay not to be an expert in those things. But, you know, if you want to know, I would love to be able to rock out at the guitar, but I've never put in the time to learn it. So if I were put on the spot and told to play the guitar, and I were like, no, I'm a guitar expert, well, now people are going to see I'm not. So I think just, like, not to BS people with what you don't know about. There's a Scrubs episode where they're all talking about the Iraq War, and they all have really intense opinions on it. This is like 2002, 2004. And JD doesn't know anything about it. And then at the end of the episode, he finally reads the Iraq War for Dummies. And then he's like, I'm ready to talk about it now. And everyone's like, no, we can't talk about it. We all got too angry at each other, and we're over it. We moved on to the next thing. And it's like, he, like, finally researched it. And, you know, but if you have a few things, I guess, that you really want to keep up with, or, you know, if even just with current affairs, you know, have enough to be able to get through the weekly news quiz. But if you are really passionate about climate change or gun control or any hot issue, we can't be an expert on all of them. So.
Well, and actually, this is sort of a detour, but I think it's worth saying, so I'm going to say. But the one other thing that I think is important for people to think about, especially if you're saying, like, I'm really passionate about gun control, and I'm gonna do some research about it, is, like, be aware of confirmation bias, and be a critical consumer. Yeah. Because I think it's so easy. Like, I think the term, it's funny, I learned this in my, like, high school psychology class. But it was so, like, it felt so relevant then, and now it's, like, even more so. But the term in that class was cyber balkanization. Like, it's so easy to just, like, isolate yourself inside your own echo chamber. And I think it's really important to kind of fight that. And, like, not to say, like, you should be looking for alternative facts. Like, but like, I think being open to all sides of the argument is really important.
I mean, I have so much to say about that, so I'll hold off. But no, I was thinking about that in the context of religion. So I won't go down a wormhole of that. But if you want your side backed up, you will find it. Whatever your belief is, you're going to find it. But I think to, like, put a pin on the whole conversation of do you fact check this and that, is think about it right now the same way you would think about gossip, which is don't spread it. If you don't know, like, if you have a thing, again, free baby food, whatever your thing is, did you look it up? No, don't spread it. Maybe there is free baby food, maybe there's not. But, like, if it's really important to you to know, to let your parent friends know about this free baby food thing, you would want to make sure that that's accurate before you go telling everyone about it. Because, you know, if it's not, you just lied to all these people. So if I were going to say, hey guys, great news, China has a vaccine. Oh my gosh, I would want to know that so thoroughly before I reposted it. So I think it's hard. It's on us to evaluate what we're reading and say, hey, is this real? Maybe I should look it up. But I think it could go one step further before you even post it, to say, hey, maybe I should look this up before I put it out there. The same way you wouldn't want to spread gossip, maybe.
Yeah, totally. That sounds like excellent. Excellent advice.
Great. Well, we solved that problem. Well, I'm asking everybody about something positive they've seen. Have you seen any positive headlines? No, have you seen any heartwarming stories that have made you kind of smile this week?
I like that question.
Okay.
Oh, that's such a good question. I wish I had a better answer.
It could be a cute dog you saw. It could be volunteer things you're hearing about. I hear that there's a lot going on right now with foster dogs getting adopted and animals returning to nature and
oh, that's lovely.
yeah, people stepping up, helping each other.
That really, really warmed my. That was like, wow, that's really cool. Is and this is a classic story of me seeing the headline and then not reading further into it. So now that I say this, I think I'll go look up the article and see what this means. But one of the big problems right now is the lack of ventilators, right? And so Fiat and Ferrari are, at least this headline told me, that they are talking about shifting some of their manufacturing workers to make ventilators for people in Italy. And it sounded like maybe even like Ford and GM, I think, some other... now I'm feeling really like self-conscious because I'm like, is this true? Am I remembering this correctly? But
are they donating their factories for making these ventilators?
My understanding was just like it's like some of their workforce is going to be a part of helping make the ventilators.
Yeah, I'd heard that people were trying to figure out how to 3D print them, and that could be a good way to mass produce a lot. So sciencey people are coming up with good solutions.
They're doing it, yeah.
They are doing it. I also saw like tattoo parlors have a lot of sanitary products, masks, this and that to keep everything hygienic. And they said, we're going to be closed for a few months. We're donating all these things to the hospitals. And I was like, yay! So I love that kind of stuff.
That's very cool.
I'm here for
and it's
goodness.
Like, it's one of the like kind of pretty basic pieces of advice that I got recently that I just hadn't thought about is like a great way to support local businesses and restaurants right now is to buy gift cards.
Someone sent us a gift card, and it was so nice. It was so unexpected, and we can have takeout now from that place, and I was really grateful for it. It was nice, and on top of that, I'm going to tip the person who works there because it's nice to support the companies, but I also am concerned about the people who work in there.
You know, I said this to your wife when I saw her, and I want to say it again. I want to say it as many times as possible. Like, less grocery store employees, less all medical personnel, like the people who are really having to work really hard to make the rest of us feel a little bit more normal. It's a really big deal.
That's thoughtful of you. She appreciates that. I appreciate people who are putting their bodies on the front line of this war against disease. And I wish she were not an essential person because she's essential to me and I want her home. But, you know, we got to have our food because if you don't have food, people are going to loot and riot and it's a safety thing. And so I'm glad that she is coming home to me every day.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Well, were there any recommendations that you wanted to mention of movies or books or podcasts, anything that people can have fun right now in their quarantine time?
Oh, good question. I'm trying to think of what's good right now. Like I feel like the stuff that I'm consuming is like kind of like old news. I'm reading All the Light We Cannot See.
Yes, I loved that one. Oh my gosh, it's
great.
Very good.
I just got a bunch of books by Toni Morrison and Scott Monaday for the holidays. So I'm excited to kind of dig into those.
I read Beloved by Toni Morrison 2 years ago and was really blown away by it.
I'm literally staring at that one right now.
Oh. Yeah, it's heavy. It's really heavy. I'm going to repeat. You said you were reading All the Light We Cannot See. I wanted to make sure people heard that title. I heard a headline that was going to be a movie in the future. So could be really interesting.
The whole time I've been reading it, I'm like, how would you write a screenplay for this? Like, it's just so, because I just think that the like shifting timeline is so fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be cool.
I love books with different perspectives, and I like. That was why I like Jojo Rabbit so much. Was I really loved not to dismiss the wrongs that people have done, but to sort of understand why people did the actions they did, and then to also empathize with the fact that people are all just trying to get home to their families and love.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important to not villainize the enemy, because there is no enemy. We're all trying to make it. But not to excuse the behavior of abusers. But
I think it's that's a life's complexity that's like really hard to reconcile, and it's cool. I think, like when art is able to kind of confront that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have a lot of good reading on your plate.
Yeah, I'm sure hoping so. And then I actually just signed up for 3 months of guitar lessons. So hopefully I will be able to play guitar in June.
Oh my gosh. Please, please, please serenade me in a few months when you've gotten to where you want to be, because when I am serenaded, I am just like my happiest. I think the guitar is the most charming and magical, and it would thrill me to hear your progress.
Oh my gosh, okay, great. That gives me
let that be your
goal.
incentive.
Yes, cool.
I love that. Was there anything that you want to address that we didn't talk about?
No, this was lovely. It's so nice talking to you.
It's so good to talk to you. Who should I talk to next? Is there anybody that you think would be interesting to hear about their life right now?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know. I think a lot of people have interest. I mean, this thing is so unique because it is affecting literally everybody. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I guess I do think my two sisters have interesting perspectives. I mean, Alex is in the arts, and so this is really showing her world in a variety of ways. And Erica is a prosecutor, so I think that's kind of very different but interesting kind of effects on both of them.
Yeah, I think about people who are freelancing and like just it's a good time to be in the podcast industry. It's I think about like YouTubers and people, if you're able to transfer your art to Etsy or online and do that, great, but a lot of art is theater and performative and not something you can do in your own home. So,
well, and actually another person that could be interesting is my friend Claire. She was the one who had just recently moved to LA when you and I went to Disneyland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She and her partner have been doing like art installation a lot lately. Like it's her partner's main gig, but then she has been helping with it. And when she's not doing that, she's helping with designs for solar panels. which like no one is really doing right now.
Yeah.
And so she was telling me that like, you know, they're both considered private contractors, and so applying for unemployment is actually really complicated right now. Because they're technically not unemployed, they're just not getting any work.
That's a loophole.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that could be a sure thing as well.
Yeah, I think as I move through the days and weeks, I will want to talk to people and be like, how are you making it? But
yeah, the financial side of this is going to be really fascinating.
I just wish, like, I know this isn't how the world works, but like if we're pausing everything so we can all flatten the curve and we can all go home and stay home so we don't get people sick, can we postpone rent? Like, can that please just not happen? Because if we would just pause that, oh my gosh, like my cares I'd be staycation, happy town, like, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think one of the most interesting things that I saw in relation to this is like, this pandemic will uniquely expose the cracks and fissures in our society, I think was the way they phrased it.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Yeah.
That's, in so many ways, in an economic way, in a not caring for, providing for teachers, healthcare, and then the hourly employees, the people who now are being asked to stay at work. But also just like the way that we care for each other. And, you know, if you are someone who's choosing to try and flatten the curve for the good of the human race, then, you know, it can also be a moment to come together and to appreciate that you do affect so many people. And all of our lives are linked, for better, for worse. I mean, climate change, the planet, we all have to make it through together, but it can feel like you're alone and you're not. So
it's true.
Well, you're beautiful, and I'm going to wrap this up and tell the people that I love them, and I thank them for listening, and I thank you for your time, Bekah.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been really lovely. You are such a gift. I'm very grateful for you.
I appreciate that. Would you like to have the final meow on the podcast?
Just literally, did I just say it?
Yeah.
Okay. Meow.
Nail.